Nikola Tesla was born on July 10, 1856, in the small village of Smiljan, located in what was then the Austrian Empire, today part of modern-day Croatia. His birth took place in a rural, mountainous region where traditional life, religious customs, and oral storytelling still shaped everyday experience. This setting, far removed from industrial centers, formed the quiet backdrop to the early life of a man who would later help redefine the modern technological world. Tesla's origins were modest, but they were deeply rooted in discipline, intellect, and cultural tradition. Tesla came from a Serbian Orthodox family with a strong emphasis on education and spirituality. His father, Milutin Tesla, was an Orthodox priest and a gifted writer and speaker. Milutin possessed a sharp memory and a talent for language, qualities he hoped his son would use in a clerical or literary career. From an early age, Nikola was exposed to sermons, religious texts, and classical literature, absorbing the rhythms of language and disciplined thought that would later influence his precise and structured way of thinking. His mother, Nikola Tesla, played an equally crucial role in shaping his intellectual character, despite having no formal education. She was known for her exceptional ingenuity and practical intelligence, designing and building household tools and mechanical devices with her own hands. Tesla would later credit her as the true source of his inventive abilities, stating that his creative instincts were inherited from her. Through her, he encountered the idea that imagination and problem-solving could emerge naturally from daily life, not only from books or formal study. Tesla's childhood was also shaped by both inspiration and trauma. He was one of several siblings, but the death of his older brother Dane in a tragic accident deeply affected the family. This loss cast a long, emotional shadow over Tesla's early years and may have intensified his inward focus and determination. Growing up in the presence of grief and high expectations, he developed a strong inner world, marked by vivid imagination, intense concentration, and a sense of destiny that set him apart from other children. The combination of religious discipline, maternal creativity, rural isolation, and emotional intensity formed the foundation of Tesla's early identity. His family background did not provide wealth or privilege, but it offered something more enduring: intellectual rigor, moral seriousness, and respect for knowledge. From this environment emerged a young mind uniquely prepared to bridge imagination and science, setting Nikola Tesla on a path that would eventually lead from a small village to the forefront of global innovation. From an early age, Nikola Tesla displayed an intense and unusual curiosity that set him apart from other children. His mind was constantly active, driven by a need to understand how things worked rather than simply accepting them as they were. Everyday objects became sources of fascination, and natural phenomena, especially light, sound, and motion, captured his imagination. This restless curiosity was not casual interest, but a deep, almost obsessive drive to explore the hidden principles behind the visible world. Tesla's childhood was marked by extraordinary mental abilities that both aided and troubled him. He possessed a powerful visual imagination, capable of forming detailed images in his mind with such clarity that they seemed real. While this ability later became central to his method of invention, allowing him to design machines entirely in his head, it initially caused confusion and distress. Sudden flashes of light and vivid mental images sometimes overwhelmed him, blurring the boundary between thought and perception. Rather than diminishing his intellectual growth, These experiences sharpened his concentration and self-discipline as he learned to control his inner world. His early education began in local schools, where he quickly distinguished himself as an exceptional student. Tesla showed particular talent in mathematics and science, often performing complex calculations mentally and astonishing his teachers with his speed and accuracy. Formal lessons were easy for him, but he was not satisfied with memorization alone. He sought underlying patterns and logical coherence, questioning established explanations and exploring alternative solutions even when they were not required. This tendency sometimes placed him at odds with conventional teaching methods, yet it revealed the originality of his mind. Language and literature also played an important role in Tesla's education. Influenced by his father's scholarly background, he became fluent in several languages and developed a strong memory for poetry and prose. This linguistic discipline contributed to his later ability to articulate complex ideas with clarity and precision. Education, for Tesla, was never limited to technical knowledge. It was a comprehensive mental training that combined logic, imagination, and cultural awareness. By the end of his early schooling, Tesla had already formed the habits that would define his life's work: relentless curiosity, mental independence, and an ability to think beyond physical constraints. His childhood education did more than prepare him academically. It shaped a mode of thinking in which imagination and reason worked together seamlessly. These early years laid the groundwork for a scientific approach that relied not on trial and error alone, but on deep conceptual understanding. An approach that would later distinguish Tesla as one of the most original minds of the modern age. As he moved beyond his early education, Nikola Tesla entered a demanding period of formal study that would shape his scientific discipline and intellectual independence. In the early 1870s, he enrolled at the Austrian Polytechnic in Graz, one of the leading technical institutions of the time. There, Tesla was exposed to advanced mathematics, physics, and mechanical engineering, disciplines that gave structure and rigor to the imaginative thinking he had developed in childhood. The transition from intuitive curiosity to systematic science marked a decisive step in his development as an engineer. At Graz, Tesla quickly distinguished himself through extraordinary dedication and stamina. He attended lectures obsessively, often studying from early morning until late at night, driven by a belief that complete mastery was both possible and necessary. His professors recognized his brilliance, particularly in mathematics and electrical theory, where he demonstrated an exceptional ability to grasp abstract principles and apply them instantly. Tesla did not merely learn formulas, he internalized systems, seeing connections between concepts that others treated as separate topics. One of the most formative moments of his studies occurred during lectures on electrical machinery, especially direct current systems. Tesla became increasingly dissatisfied with the limitations he perceived in existing technologies. Rather than accepting established designs, he mentally explored alternative principles, imagining rotating magnetic fields and new forms of electrical transmission. These ideas were not yet fully formed inventions, but they revealed his habit of thinking beyond current practice, using formal education as a platform for innovation rather than imitation. Despite his intellectual success, Tesla's time at the Polytechnic was marked by personal struggle. His intense work habits pushed him to physical and mental exhaustion, and his uncompromising perfectionism left little room for rest or balance. Over time, this relentless pace began to affect his academic stability. Although he absorbed vast amounts of knowledge, he did not complete his degree in a conventional manner. Yet this apparent failure did not reflect a lack of ability. Rather, it highlighted his difficulty adapting to rigid institutional expectations that could not accommodate his extreme working style. Tesla later continued his scientific education through independent study and brief periods at other institutions, including studies in Prague, though his path remained unconventional. What mattered most was not formal certification, but the intellectual foundation he had built. His studies in engineering and science equipped him with the theoretical depth needed to transform imagination into working systems. By the end of this period, Tesla had emerged not simply as a trained engineer, but as a thinker prepared to challenge the very assumptions of modern electrical science, carrying forward ideas that would soon reshape the technological world. Nikola Tesla's early work in Europe unfolded during a decisive period when electrical science was rapidly transforming from theory into industry. After completing his engineering education, Tesla entered a continent alive with innovation, but also constrained by rigid hierarchies and conservative engineering traditions. Europe offered him access to advanced machinery, urban infrastructure, and leading technical minds, yet it also demanded discipline and conformity. From the very beginning, Tesla stood slightly apart, absorbing knowledge intensely while quietly developing ideas that stretched beyond accepted practice. One of the most important stages of this early European period was Tesla's employment with the Continental Edison Company in Paris. There, he worked on improving direct current generators and electrical systems already installed across the continent. His tasks were practical and demanding, troubleshooting malfunctioning equipment, redesigning components for efficiency, and adapting machines to the varied conditions of European cities. Tesla earned a reputation as a tireless worker, capable of diagnosing complex problems mentally and implementing solutions with remarkable speed. Yet despite his success, he grew increasingly frustrated with the limitations of direct current technology. Parallel to his professional duties, Tesla's inner intellectual life was accelerating. He began to imagine electrical systems not as fixed mechanical devices, but as dynamic fields of energy. During this time, he refined the mental visualization techniques that would later define his working method. Tesla could construct entire machines in his mind, test them mentally, and identify flaws before a single part was built. This habit, developed in Europe, separated him from many contemporaries who relied primarily on physical prototypes. A turning point occurred during his time in Budapest, where Tesla worked at the telephone exchange. While walking in a city park, he experienced a sudden moment of insight that would shape his entire career: the principle of the rotating magnetic field. This concept, born not in a laboratory but through deep contemplation, laid the theoretical foundation for alternating current motors. The idea came to him fully formed, demonstrating how his European years had fused technical training with imaginative intuition. Despite these breakthroughs, Europe proved to be a difficult environment for radical innovation. Financial backers and industrial leaders were cautious, often unwilling to invest in untested systems that challenged existing infrastructure. Tesla's ideas were admired, but rarely supported at the scale they required. By the mid-1880s, he recognized that Europe, though intellectually rich, lacked the openness and industrial boldness his vision demanded. By the time Tesla decided to leave for America, his European years had already shaped him profoundly. They had given him technical mastery, mental discipline, and a revolutionary concept that awaited the right environment to flourish. His early work in Europe was not a period of public triumph, but one of intense preparation, where the foundations of modern electrical power were quietly laid in the mind of a solitary and determined inventor. Working with Thomas Edison meant entering an environment where time, patience, and convention were constantly tested. His laboratories, first in Menlo Park and later in West Orange, were not quiet rooms for isolated genius, but noisy, crowded spaces alive with argument, trial, and error. Assistants, machinists, chemists, and draftsmen worked side by side, often for long hours that blurred the line between day and night. Edison believed progress emerged from relentless effort rather than sudden inspiration, and anyone who worked with him quickly learned that persistence mattered more than comfort. The laboratory was a place where ideas were treated as raw material, to be shaped, broken, and reshaped until they finally worked. Edison's leadership style was demanding but strangely democratic. He encouraged open debate and welcomed challenges to his ideas, as long as they were backed by experiment rather than theory alone. Young assistants were often surprised to find that rank mattered little in discussion. What counted was whether a proposal could survive practical testing. Edison frequently moved from bench to bench, asking questions, offering blunt criticism, or suddenly changing the direction of a project. This constant motion created a sense of urgency, pushing everyone to think faster, work harder, and accept failure as a normal step toward success. Failure, in fact, was central to life in Edison's workshop. Experiments rarely worked on the first attempt, and many never worked at all. Edison treated each unsuccessful trial as useful information, a way of narrowing the path toward a solution. His assistants absorbed this mindset, learning to document results carefully and to remain emotionally detached from disappointment. This approach was especially evident during long projects such as the development of electric lighting, where thousands of tests were required. Working with Edison meant accepting that progress was incremental and that exhaustion was often the price of innovation. Collaboration under Edison also blurred the boundaries of individual credit. While Edison received public recognition, inventions were often the result of collective labor. Skilled glassblowers, metalworkers, and chemists played essential roles, translating abstract ideas into functioning devices. Edison valued practical skill highly and respected those who could build as much as those who could think. For many collaborators, the experience was both empowering and frustrating. Empowering because their work mattered, frustrating because their names were rarely remembered. Yet many later acknowledged that the intensity of the environment shaped their careers and sharpened their abilities. Perhaps the most striking aspect of working with Edison was the shared sense of purpose. He believed technology could transform everyday life, and he communicated this belief with contagious energy. Long hours felt justified by the idea that the work might change how people lived, worked, or communicated. Assistants were not merely employees. They were participants in a broader experiment to bring science into daily use. In this way, working with Edison was less about serving a single inventor and more about joining an early model of industrial research, one that combined imagination, discipline, and relentless experimentation into a new way of creating the modern world. The break with Thomas Edison marked a turning point that reshaped both a career and the future of electrical science. What had begun as a promising collaboration gradually revealed deep differences in vision, method, and philosophy. Edison valued practical results that could be quickly commercialized, while his associate believed that elegant theory and long-term efficiency mattered just as much as immediate success. As projects accumulated and tensions grew, it became clear that their approaches to innovation were moving in opposite directions. The separation was not sudden but inevitable, the result of incompatible ideas about how progress should be achieved. Financial disagreements played a decisive role in the rupture. Promises made in the heat of ambitious projects clashed with the realities of business, leaving frustration and disappointment behind. For the younger inventor, the experience was a harsh lesson in the power dynamics of industrial research, where ideas could be praised yet undervalued. The sense of having contributed greatly without receiving fair recognition sharpened the desire for independence. Breaking away from Edison was not simply an act of defiance, it was a conscious step toward reclaiming creative control and personal dignity. After the separation, a period of hardship followed. Without the support of a major laboratory or wealthy backers, survival itself became a challenge. Menial labor and uncertain prospects replaced the intense but structured life of Edison's workshops. Yet this difficult phase also provided clarity. Freed from constant deadlines and commercial pressure, the inventor could finally focus on ideas that had long been dismissed as impractical. The break created space for imagination to expand beyond the limits of existing systems. This new direction soon crystallized into a bold alternative vision of electricity. Instead of refining established technologies, the focus shifted toward entirely different principles and methods. The goal was no longer incremental improvement, but transformation, rethinking how energy could be generated, transmitted, and used. Experiments became more theoretical, more daring, and less constrained by immediate profitability. In isolation, concepts that once seemed radical began to take coherent form. The break with Edison ultimately became a defining moment of independence. It demonstrated that innovation does not follow a single path, and that great advances often emerge from conflict as much as cooperation. By choosing separation over compromise, the inventor accepted uncertainty in exchange for freedom. That decision opened the door to a legacy built not on inherited systems, but on original thought, proving that leaving a powerful mentor can sometimes be the first step toward changing the world on one's own terms. The invention of the alternating current system marked one of the most important turning points in the history of modern technology. At its center stood Nikola Tesla, whose vision of electricity went far beyond existing limitations. At a time when electrical power was still experimental and inefficient, Tesla imagined a system capable of delivering energy over vast distances with minimal loss. His ideas challenged the dominant practices of the era and required not only technical brilliance, but also the courage to defy established authority. Tesla's insight lay in understanding the fundamental advantages of alternating current over direct current. By allowing electricity to periodically change direction, AC made it possible to use transformers to raise or lower voltage as needed. High voltage could carry power efficiently across long distances, while lower voltage could be safely delivered to homes and factories. This elegant principle solved one of the greatest problems of early electrification and transformed electricity from a local novelty into a scalable public utility. Developing the AC system was not a single invention, but a chain of breakthroughs. Tesla designed polyphase generators, motors, and transmission systems that worked together as a unified whole. His induction motor, in particular, demonstrated that alternating current could power machines reliably without excessive sparking or mechanical wear. These innovations showed that AC was not only practical but superior, capable of supporting industrial growth on an unprecedented scale. The introduction of the AC system triggered fierce resistance from supporters of older technologies. Public debates, aggressive marketing campaigns, and even fear-driven propaganda attempted to portray alternating current as dangerous and untrustworthy. Yet Tesla remained focused on demonstration rather than argument. Through carefully designed exhibitions and real-world applications, he allowed the technology to speak for itself. Each successful test weakened opposition and strengthened confidence in the new system. The ultimate success of alternating current reshaped cities, industries, and daily life. Power stations could now be built far from population centers, and electricity could flow reliably into streets, factories, and homes. Tesla's work laid the foundation for the global electrical grids that still operate today. More than a technical achievement, the AC system represented a shift in how humanity harnessed energy, transforming electricity from a fragile experiment into the invisible backbone of the modern world. The War of Currents was not a traditional battle fought with weapons, but a fierce struggle of ideas, technologies, and influence that shaped the future of electricity. At its heart stood a fundamental question: how should electrical power be generated and distributed to a rapidly modernizing world? On one side was Thomas Edison, championing direct current, a system he had already commercialized. On the other side emerged alternating current, promoted by Nikola Tesla and supported by industrialist George Westinghouse. What followed was a conflict that blended science, business, public fear, and ambition into a defining episode of the industrial age. Direct current had the advantage of being first. Edison's system powered early urban lighting networks and gave him a powerful head start. However, DC suffered from a critical flaw. It could not travel far without significant energy loss. Power stations had to be built close to consumers, making large-scale expansion costly and inefficient. Alternating current, by contrast, offered a revolutionary solution. By using transformers to adjust voltage, AC could transmit electricity over long distances and then safely reduce it for local use. Technically, the contest was unequal, but business and public perception would determine the outcome. Edison understood that technical superiority alone would not decide the future. He launched an aggressive campaign to discredit alternating current, emphasizing its dangers and portraying it as a threat to public safety. Demonstrations were staged to show the lethal potential of high-voltage AC, and fear became a strategic weapon. The debate spilled into newspapers, courtrooms, and political discussions, turning electrical engineering into a matter of public anxiety. The conflict was no longer just about wires and generators. It was about trust, authority, and control. Tesla and Westinghouse responded in a different way. Rather than focusing on fear, they focused on proof. Large-scale demonstrations showed that alternating current could power motors, illuminate vast spaces, and operate reliably under real conditions. The most decisive moment came when AC systems were chosen for major infrastructure projects, proving their practicality beyond doubt. These successes shifted the debate from theory to reality, showing that alternating current was not only safe, but essential for a growing, interconnected society. The War of Currents ended not with a single victory, but with a gradual realization. Alternating current became the standard for power transmission, while direct current found limited, specialized uses. The conflict left a lasting legacy, illustrating how technological progress is shaped as much by economics, politics, and persuasion as by innovation itself. In the end, the War of Currents transformed electricity from a contested experiment into a universal force, laying the groundwork for the modern electrical world that followed. The collaboration between Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse marked a rare moment when visionary science and industrial power moved in the same direction. Tesla brought revolutionary ideas about alternating current, while Westinghouse possessed the manufacturing capacity, financial resources, and strategic insight to bring those ideas into the real world. Their partnership was not based on identical personalities or methods, but on mutual recognition. Each understood that the other held what he lacked. Together, they formed a bridge between theoretical brilliance and practical implementation. Westinghouse immediately grasped the long-term potential of Tesla's AC system. Unlike many businessmen of the era, he was willing to invest in ideas that had not yet proven themselves commercially. He acquired Tesla's key patents and placed the inventor in an environment where experimentation could continue without constant pressure for short-term profit. This decision was bold and risky, especially during a period when public opinion and established interests still favored competing systems. Yet Westinghouse believed that technical superiority would eventually prevail if given the chance to mature. The working relationship itself was marked by respect rather than control. Tesla was not treated as a replaceable engineer, but as a creative force whose independence mattered. Westinghouse allowed Tesla to pursue improvements in motors, generators, and transmission systems with relatively little interference. This freedom accelerated innovation and ensured that alternating current evolved as a complete, integrated system rather than a series of isolated devices. The partnership demonstrated that industrial leadership did not always require domination. Sometimes it required restraint. Economic reality, however, soon tested their collaboration. Financial crises and mounting legal battles placed enormous strain on Westinghouse's company. In one of the most remarkable gestures in industrial history, Tesla agreed to release Westinghouse from burdensome royalty obligations tied to AC patents. This decision cost Tesla immense personal wealth, but preserved the survival of the system he believed in. It revealed a fundamental difference in motivation. Where others saw profit, Tesla saw legacy. Westinghouse, in turn, never forgot this sacrifice. The collaboration ultimately reshaped the modern world. Under Westinghouse's industrial direction and Tesla's intellectual framework, alternating current became the backbone of large-scale electrification. Cities expanded, industries transformed, and electricity became a reliable public utility rather than a fragile experiment. Their partnership stands as a powerful example of what can happen when imagination and enterprise align, not perfectly, but purposefully, to change the direction of history. As his inventions began to reshape the electrical world, Nikola Tesla emerged not only as a scientist, but as a public figure of rare charisma. In an age fascinated by progress and spectacle, Tesla understood the power of performance. He did not hide his ideas behind laboratory walls. Instead, he carried them onto brightly lit stages, lecture halls, and exhibition spaces. These appearances transformed complex scientific principles into unforgettable visual experiences, capturing the imagination of both experts and the general public. Tesla's lectures were carefully crafted events rather than ordinary academic talks. He spoke in clear, dramatic language, guiding audiences through abstract concepts with confidence and theatrical timing. As he explained the nature of electricity, sparks leapt from coils, lamps glowed without wires, and currents flowed through his own body without causing harm. These demonstrations were not reckless stunts, but controlled experiments designed to show mastery over forces most people feared. Each lecture reinforced the idea that electricity, though powerful, could be understood and safely harnessed. Public demonstrations elevated Tesla's reputation to an almost mythical level. Newspapers described him as a wizard or magician, blurring the line between science and wonder. At major exhibitions, his displays stood out not only for their technical brilliance, but for their emotional impact. Spectators watched in silence as light appeared seemingly from nothing, and machines responded without visible connections. Through these moments, Tesla turned invisible energy into something tangible, shaping how society perceived the future. Fame, however, came with its own challenges. Tesla became known more for his dramatic presentations than for the patient engineering behind them. While admirers celebrated his genius, critics questioned the practicality of his more ambitious ideas. Yet Tesla remained committed to public engagement, believing that inspiring curiosity was as important as securing patents. He saw education not as a secondary task, but as a responsibility, especially in a world being rapidly transformed by technology. Through lectures and demonstrations, Tesla helped redefine the relationship between science and society. He showed that innovation could be shared openly, that knowledge could be both rigorous and captivating. These public performances ensured that his influence extended beyond factories and power stations into the cultural imagination itself. In making electricity visible, beautiful, and awe-inspiring, Tesla did more than explain technology. He taught an entire generation to expect wonder from the future. Driven by a belief that electricity could move freely through space, Nikola Tesla turned his attention toward wireless energy and radio at the height of his creative power. He imagined a world where information and power traveled without wires, crossing oceans and continents as naturally as sound through air. This vision was not speculative fantasy to him, but a technical challenge awaiting the right combination of frequency, resonance, and scale. In laboratories filled with coils, transmitters, and improvised instruments, Tesla pursued the invisible pathways of electromagnetic waves. Central to these experiments was Tesla's conviction that the Earth itself could act as a conductor. He believed that by tuning electrical systems to precise resonant frequencies, energy could be transmitted efficiently through the ground and the atmosphere. His work with high-frequency currents revealed surprising behaviors: sparks stretching meters through the air, lamps glowing at a distance, and electrical discharges behaving almost like living things. These experiments suggested that wireless transmission was not only possible, but governed by principles that could be mastered with enough precision. Tesla's investigations into radio followed a similar path. Long before radio communication became widespread, he demonstrated the transmission and reception of signals without physical connections. His devices could send coded impulses across space, hinting at a future of remote control and global communication. Tesla viewed radio not merely as a tool for sending messages, but as a foundation for a networked world where information flowed instantly and universally. In his mind, wireless communication was inseparable from wireless power. Both were expressions of the same underlying laws. The most ambitious expression of this work took shape in large-scale experimental facilities. Towering structures and massive coils were built to amplify and project energy far beyond the limits of conventional laboratories. These installations represented a leap from controlled demonstration to planetary-scale experimentation. Yet ambition came with risk. The technical demands were enormous, and financial support proved fragile. As costs rose and results became harder to measure, skepticism grew among investors and contemporaries alike. Despite setbacks, Tesla's wireless experiments left a lasting imprint. Many of his ideas anticipated later developments in radio, remote control, and wireless communication systems that would define the 20th century. Even where his grandest goals remained unrealized, the concepts he explored pushed scientific boundaries forward. His work reframed the relationship between energy, space, and communication, suggesting that the future of technology would not be bound by cables and poles, but shaped by waves moving invisibly through the world. In his later years, Nikola Tesla found himself increasingly isolated from the industrial world he had helped to create. While alternating current had become the foundation of modern electrification, Tesla himself was no longer at the center of technological development. Younger engineers, large corporations, and organized research laboratories now dominated innovation. Tesla, by contrast, continued to work alone, guided by ideas that were often too ambitious, too theoretical, or too far ahead of available resources to attract consistent support. Financial instability became a constant companion during this period. Tesla had never been skilled at managing money, nor was he motivated by wealth. Royalties that might have secured his future were long gone, sacrificed in earlier years for the survival of technologies he believed in. As funding for his later projects collapsed, he relied on loans, advances, and occasional patronage. Hotels replaced laboratories as his primary residence, and unpaid bills accumulated quietly as his public image faded from that of celebrated inventor to eccentric genius. Despite these hardships, Tesla did not abandon his intellectual pursuits. He continued to publish articles, give interviews, and announce new theories, often describing revolutionary concepts involving energy, physics, and defense. Some of these ideas were visionary, others speculative, and many were poorly understood by contemporaries. Without the means to build large-scale prototypes, his claims increasingly existed only on paper and in speech. This gap between imagination and implementation further distanced him from mainstream science and industry. Public perception of Tesla during these years shifted dramatically. Newspapers portrayed him as a mysterious figure, brilliant but impractical, admired yet doubted. His earlier triumphs were acknowledged, but his current struggles were often emphasized. Tesla himself seemed aware of this change, yet he remained proud and intellectually defiant. He refused to simplify his ideas for popularity or to compromise his principles for financial security. For him, originality mattered more than acceptance. Tesla's final years were marked by quiet persistence rather than visible success. Living modestly, often alone, he continued to think in grand, global terms even as his personal circumstances declined. These years revealed a tragic contrast. A man whose ideas powered the modern world, yet who struggled to sustain himself within it. His financial difficulties were not the result of failure of intellect, but of a life spent prioritizing vision over profit, a choice that ultimately defined both his hardship and his enduring legacy. In the final phase of his life, Nikola Tesla drifted into a state of profound isolation, both social and intellectual. Once surrounded by collaborators, financiers, and public audiences, he now lived largely alone, occupying quiet hotel rooms that doubled as makeshift offices. The world he had helped electrify moved forward rapidly, yet increasingly without him. New generations of engineers built upon systems he pioneered, often unaware of the mind that first imagined them. Tesla remained physically present in the modern age, but intellectually detached from its institutions. This isolation deepened as his projects became more abstract and difficult to realize. Without laboratories, teams, or steady funding, many of his ideas existed only as notes, sketches, and carefully guarded mental constructions. Tesla continued to conceive vast systems, global energy transmission, advanced wireless communication, and novel physical principles, but lacked the means to test them at scale. The gap between his imagination and practical execution widened with each passing year, turning unfinished projects into a defining feature of his later life. Tesla's solitude was not merely circumstantial, it was also psychological. He trusted his own reasoning more than the judgment of institutions and grew increasingly skeptical of organized science. Peer review, bureaucracy, and corporate research held little appeal for him. Instead, he worked inwardly, refining concepts in silence and solitude. This inward turn sharpened his originality, but also reinforced his separation from a scientific community that increasingly valued collaboration and incremental progress over solitary vision. Public encounters during this period were rare and often misunderstood. When Tesla did speak, his ideas were frequently dismissed as impractical or fantastical. Journalists focused on his eccentric habits rather than his intellectual discipline, reinforcing a narrative of decline. Yet beneath this surface image, Tesla remained mentally active and intensely focused. His isolation was not one of resignation, but of stubborn independence, a refusal to abandon ideas simply because the world was no longer willing to follow him. The unfinished nature of Tesla's final projects has become central to his legacy. Some see them as evidence of decline, others as proof of how far ahead of his time he truly was. What is certain is that his isolation allowed him to think beyond immediate constraints, even if it prevented realization. In the quiet rooms where his life ended, Tesla continued to imagine futures the 20th century could not yet build, leaving behind not only completed inventions, but unanswered questions that still echo in the history of science. The death of Nikola Tesla passed quietly, almost unnoticed by a world that had already moved on to new names and new technologies. He died alone in a New York hotel room, far removed from the laboratories, factories, and public stages where he had once stood at the center of attention. There were no great ceremonies, no immediate recognition of the magnitude of what was lost. Yet this quiet ending stood in sharp contrast to the scale of his influence, which had already spread invisibly across continents through the electrical systems he helped create. In the years following his death, Tesla's reputation underwent a profound transformation. Initially remembered as a brilliant but impractical figure, he was gradually re-evaluated as historians and engineers revisited his work. Patents, notebooks, and early experiments revealed how many modern technologies rested on foundations he had laid decades earlier. Concepts that once seemed speculative, alternating current networks, radio-based communication, remote control, had become everyday realities. Tesla's ideas, long separated from his personal circumstances, began to speak for themselves. Scientifically, Tesla's impact lies not only in specific inventions, but in the way he expanded the boundaries of possibility. He approached electricity as a universal force rather than a local utility, thinking in terms of systems, resonance, and global scale. This mindset influenced later generations of researchers working in electromagnetism, power engineering, and communications. Even where his theories were incomplete or flawed, they encouraged others to ask larger questions and to imagine technology beyond immediate commercial use. Tesla's legacy also reshaped how society views the relationship between genius and success. His life became a case study in the tension between innovation and recognition, vision and reward. Unlike many industrial figures, he did not build an empire or leave behind vast wealth. Instead, he left ideas, some realized, some unfinished, that continued to inspire long after his death. This has made him a powerful symbol for scientists and creators who value discovery over profit and imagination over conformity. Today, Tesla's name occupies a unique place in scientific and cultural history. He is remembered not simply as an inventor, but as a thinker who anticipated the electrical and connected world long before it existed. His death closed a solitary life, but his influence continued to grow, shaping modern civilization in ways few individuals ever have. In this sense, Tesla did not truly disappear in 1943. He became part of the infrastructure of the modern world. His legacy carried silently through every current that flows and every signal that travels unseen.